I got on this airplane and I sat down and I was sitting in the holy grail of coach. 3 seats, all to me. I was going to take my backpack and put it next to me. Nobody was going to talk to me. I had everything arranged, 3 hours just to me. It was going to be fantastic. Nobody calling me, texting me, anything like that. And this was before they put Wi-Fi on airplanes, so everything was turned off. And right before they shut the door, the flight attendant came up behind me, tapped me on my shoulder and said, "Sir, would it be okay if this young lady sat down next to you?" I said, "Okay," but inside I was going, crap. So I get up and let her in. She sits on the window, and I look her in the eye, and she looks at me. I said, "Hello, my name is Jeb," and she did not stop talking until we got to Phoenix, Arizona. It was a run-on sentence that went for 3 hours. But at the time, I was writing, where's that little book? I was writing this book right here, People by You. And if you've read this book, there's a whole chapter in there about connecting with people. And one of the things that we've learned about connections, a lot of people want to build rapport. I really don't believe in rapport. Rapport to me is manipulative because I'm basically trying to find common ground with someone so I can get them to basically stop talking so I can start pitching. So a lot of salespeople go in, they check the box off, build rapport, and then they go back to talking about themselves. So I'm writing a chapter on connecting, which if you listen to people, it builds extreme emotional connections, and it opens them up to self-reveal. Who did I take this from? Cool. So I thought, I'm going to practice that. So I looked her in the eye and I let her talk. I mean, she was up in Chicago to see her boyfriend. Her daddy didn't really like her boyfriend, but she kind of liked him. And but he was kind of a little bit needy and clingy, but it was kind of nice to get away. And she wasn't sure he wanted to marry her. She wasn't sure she wanted to marry him. He'd been talking to her about coming down to Phoenix, but she wasn't sure about that. In Phoenix, she was working for a deaf school. And it was really hard because there was a whole battle going on at the deaf school from the people that could hear and the people that couldn't hear. And people were signing behind her back, and it was really hurting her feelings. She wasn't sure she was going to be a teacher or she wanted to be something else. And she had a pretty good time. She lived over in Scottsdale in the house of an athlete with a bunch of mean girls. I mean, they weren't always mean, but a lot of times they were. But sometimes they weren't, and they had a really good time. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to give that up to move in with a boyfriend who was a little bit clingy. Her daddy didn't like him anyway. And oh my God, she doesn't really know what she wanted to do with her life. That's a short version, but if I had to go through it, you do too. So all I said was, I reached in my bag, I got a book, my first book was called Power Principles, and there's a goal sheeting process in there that sort of helps you figure out what it is you want to do with your life. So I handed it to her and said, there's a goal sheeting process in here. Why don't you use that? Maybe it'll help you figure out what you want to do with your life. If you've ever been to Sky Harbor in Phoenix, there's the place where you go out for the rental cars. There's a big parking deck on the other side of that. And I was out there waiting for the rental car bus, and the last time I saw this girl, she was in a Jeep with one of the mean girls was driving it, and she pointed at me. She goes, "That's the guy right there. Bye." 2 weeks later, I come home from another trip. Now, I just when you travel and you go to as many places as I do, 2 weeks is like 4 months. You just can't even hardly remember. I mean, I took off on this trip last Thursday, and it feels like it was a month ago. So I walk in my door, and my wife is standing there. Now, just for context, I've known my wife since she was 14 years old. That's how we do it in Georgia, by the way. And so, we've been together for a long time, so I pretty much know everything about her. And when I walked in the door, I don't know if you've ever seen this look, gentlemen, but the look on my wife's face was, "You are going to die now." And so my brain kicked on, because I'm a guy, and when a guy's brain kicks on, my brain kicked on and said, "Whatever you do, don't lie. Whatever you do, don't lie." Because when you've known someone since they were 14 years old, you can try to lie, and yes, I do, and I get caught every single time. She looks up. She's holding these papers in her hand. She looks up, and she says, "Who is Stephanie, and what have you been doing in Arizona?" And I said, "Who is Stephanie, and what have I been doing in Arizona?" I finally managed to take the papers out of her grip, and it was a letter from this girl on the airplane. The thing that had my wife so upset was the first line in the letter said, "Dear Jeb, the time I spent with you changed my life." I pointed out at the end, it said, "P.S. I bought your book for all my friends," that it was probably a sales call, but my wife didn't think that was very funny. But as we went through the letter, I explained the situation. This girl had actually taken time to write a letter to thank me for listening to her, because no one else had taken the time to really understand her. And it was probably because she was a walking run-on sentence, but it made a massive impact on her life. It created an emotional connection that compelled her to write that down and scare the living hell out of my wife. And if you think about that with your clients, with your prospective clients, the same thing happens. Let me ask you a question, show of hands. Who has someone in their life that they would describe this way? I feel like I can tell this person anything. Who has that person? Cool. What's the nature of that relationship?
My wife.
Your wife. How come you feel like you can tell your wife anything?
Well, I know some of her secrets too. Trust.
Okay, trust her. What else? Somebody else had their hand raised. Tell me about the nature of that relationship.
I would say trust.
Trust? Anybody else?
They seem to care.
Okay, they seem to care. Do they judge you? No. I mean, they just listen to you. I mean, you think about those relationships, you go with a problem and they just listen to you. They don't try to overpower you with advice or tell you anything. They just listen. And here's the thing, that connection that you feel, that emotional connection that makes you feel that level of trust, the same thing happens with clients. Now, granted, it's a little bit different. I mean, you don't have a lifetime to get to know people, and you're typically not going to be in a situation, and some of you probably are with some of your clients, where people are going to tell you everything about their lives. But the feeling that I can tell you everything is absolutely possible to create.